All right, well, welcome to a car video, my inaugural car video, but by myself. I am on my way to WBC, the World Board Gaming Championships, in Seven Springs, Pennsylvania, at the Slopeside Inn. Very much excited, but I'm also kind of saddened that Alexander's not with me this year. Not because he's sick, not because we've parted ways. He is on his way to England to spend some time with family. I don't blame him at all.
Use the left lane to merge onto I-70 East toward Wheeling.
You may end up getting some Siri directions in here. This is typical player aid fashion. And just another comment, you may be looking at the video going, what the heck's wrong with this? Well, this is the best I could do. For some reason, the angle that I've got isn't allowing it to shoot properly. But you know what? Don't watch, just listen. So in this car video, I'm going to try to keep this to about 25 minutes because I don't want to use all my juice today, in the car, because today I've got a couple of meetings, meeting with Greg Smith to play a couple of games, and probably do a video meeting with Dave Stifler and maybe Bruno Sinigaglio to get a look at the small BOAR cowpens from GMT Games. Not necessarily on the P500 yet, but has been in the works for maybe a year or two. But today,
101 miles.
What I'm going to do is I am going to talk about some of my favorite solitaire games. I thought being alone today, in the car alone, I thought that would be a good topic, a fitting topic. It's also something I have definitely grown into over the past, couple of years. I think I used to really dislike solitaire gaming because, let's face it, I think I game for the interaction and social connection with other gamers, Alexander and others in our groups. But I have played a lot of different solo war games. I've liked many of them. We all have games that we play and then we ultimately say, well, that may not be for me. Doesn't mean it's not a good game, but doesn't necessarily fit with my focus or the way I like games to be. So what I was going to do today was just talk about 8 or 10, maybe 12 games that I've played over the past, 5 or 6 years. And I would say that my solitaire gaming picked up with earnest over COVID. So in 2020 and 2021, when we were all stuck at home, well, for those 4 or 5 months when I didn't go to work and worked from home, but also in the year or so after when everybody just tried to social distance and keep away from each other. But I did pick up solo gaming a lot more there. I found a lot of very cool games, fun games, interesting games, and I wanted to share some of those with you. Now, if you follow the blog, you've probably read about each and every one of these games because I've written something on them, whether they be an action point, a quick review, my thoughts, or they end up being on a top 10 list. So let's, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So some of my top solitaire games, and I'm going to kind of do these by families or series. One of my favorite series is the States of Siege series. States of Siege was created by Darren Leveloff with his Israeli independence many, many years ago with Victory Point Games. States of Siege takes a conflict or an ideal and then divides that into several different tracks that will converge on a central point. The concept here is that maybe the capital of a country is under siege or being besieged or attacked, or certain ideals, a la Gorbachev by Ben Madison from White Dog Games. That one's more about ideals of perestroika and those kinds of things, Russia opening up, glasnost, etc., and trying to get people to understand that communism wasn't working and that they wanted to do something different. But the States of Siege series games, in my opinion, are some of the finest solitaire games out there because I think their rules are fairly straightforward. The mechanics are very understandable and you can get them very quickly. And also it interjects a lot of the historical elements from those conflicts directly into the game and makes, I think, a very fitting and interesting experience. So I've played many of those games. I've probably played 15 or 20. My favorite States of Siege series game of all time is, and still is today, Mound Builders. Mound Builders was designed by Ben Madison, and Wes Ernie, and released by Victory Point Games. It deals with the Adena people, or the ancient inhabitants of the North American continent, mound builders, right? So these were primitive peoples who created their own civilizations, their own economies, and struggled against many different aspects: disease, conflict with other tribes, as well as the Spaniards coming over in the 16, 17, 1800s, and then the Americans as well as we expanded west. But that Mound Builders concept is such a good game, plays in about an hour and a half, and you go through several different periods of the Adena people, the Mound Builders. One of the coolest aspects of it is you are trying to establish what is called chiefdoms in different spaces, and you're establishing those so that they're under your control, but also so that you are creating an economy. You're building goods, trade goods that you are creating, manufacturing, finding, mining, and you're using that to build your influence and spread your kingdom over those 500 to 600 year period. And then once you get kind of expanded out, the last 30 minutes of the game is kind of about a more powerful enemy, in that case the Spaniards, coming in and driving you back and eradicating your culture, your civilization, and your kingdoms. Just a fabulous game. If you haven't heard about it, I would recommend you look into it. I actually have several written pieces on the blog. I don't believe I ever did a video because I didn't do videos in those days, really never intended to do videos, but that has definitely changed over the years. So check that one out. I love it. It absolutely is fun. A more recent game built on that same concept and system, not just the States of Siege series, but the expand and contract concept, is Gift of the Nile from White Dog Games. That one was published this year, early this year, in early 2024. A similar concept where you are the Egyptian pharaohs over several thousand years. I think it's ultimately 2,500 years. But the same concept. You're expanding out into areas like Nubia, Palestine, establishing your sepats, I think they are called in that game, or chiefdoms. Once again, building an economy through the establishment of a trading route and manufactured goods, things like gold, beer, marble, and other things. But it's the same thing. You establish your kingdom, you build up, and then it's about resisting the pressures of the Greeks and the Romans and other nations as they come in on you and try to destroy you. One of the cool things about that Gift of the Nile, and I have several videos upcoming on the blog, is you have what is called, I'm trying to remember the name, but you have these tiles that you can purchase with your limited action points. And ultimately, when you are destroyed or taken over, meaning someone got into your middle space, in that game it's Min Niffer, you can use that to rejuvenate or revitalize, bring back your culture and civilization, and try to start over again and somehow win. That's a really good game, but along those same lines, other games that I have really, really enjoyed in that States of Siege series, Soviet Dawn from Darren Leveloff, 3 or 4 years ago. Worthington Publishing did a deluxe edition. That game is fantastic. It deals with the Russian Revolution in the early 1900s, and it's fantastic. It's a very simple, I think one of the more fast-playing of the games in that series, but I really enjoyed that one. There's a lot of very cool and interesting additions to it. You can, for instance, purchase armored trains to help you fight off the Bolsheviks and the different people that are coming in. Just a really great little game. Other States of Siege series games that I've loved is Cruel Necessity. John Welsh designed that one, also from Worthington. They did a deluxe edition. Almost all of these games were originally published by Victory Point Games. But I love those games, love that series, and have really, truly enjoyed it. Some other series of games that I've truly enjoyed. Hollandspiel has some fantastic little solitaire games. I've played, I believe, 3 or 4 of theirs, but the 3 that I really liked the most, I started with Agricola, which Agricola deals with the conquest and control of Britain. And it's just a great little game. It uses what is called a 3-cup system. You literally have 3 draw cups, and into each of these draw cups you are placing counters that represent enemy forces. There are counters that like end the game or have events in them. Very interesting system. And the topmost cup is kind of the friendly cup. That means you've pacified the tribes, you've made deals with their chiefs, you've dealt with them, the Brigantes and others, and you're trying to establish your kingdom and getting them from the enemy or the opposed cup all the way through. I think the middle one's called I'm going to call it the lukewarm cup because I can't remember the name. But you're ultimately trying to get it into that friendly or pacified cup. But it's about moving around the board, building your infrastructure, keeping your legions alive. Very cool little tactical element. Has a battle board. Your legions are more powerful, but you also have barbarian foederati that you can use. They're expendable, basically. And you get those through conquering different tribes throughout the area and building your infrastructure. That's a great little game, and I think that concept of modeling how a subjugated people feels about their subjugators is a brilliant stroke of genius by Amabel Holland and Hollandspiel. They then mimicked that in a couple of other games. The next one was called Charlemagne. Charlemagne deals with King Charlemagne in France, or Francia. And also a similar concept, you are trying to expand your control, subjugating different tribes and leaders, bringing them into your cause. But also you're trying to build temples and church infrastructure to help pacify people and lead them to follow your rule. Uses the same 3-cup system. I very much enjoy the combat system in that one over what is in Agricola. A little quicker, a little more fun. You also have a couple different types of units, which I think is pretty neat. But yeah, that's a great game, and it carries that 3-cup system into that and makes a really interesting experience. The other one, and the final one that I played in that series, is called Aurelian. And it deals with the great leader Aurelian and whether he can build back the Roman Empire as it was being attacked by barbarians from the north and Germania, trying to pacify them along the Danube, but also dealing with local tribes in Germania and Francia, trying to get them over to Roman control. But you're also trying to bring religion there and build temples that give you victory points, and you get gold based on the number of things that you control. So I love that system, and if you haven't played any of those games, Agricola, Charlemagne, and Aurelian are just absolutely fabulous. I would recommend those any day. Another group of games, not necessarily a series, but they use some of the same mechanics, also from Hollandspiel that I played and loved, are Robert Dulesky's The Wars of Marcus Aurelius, and then the follow-up game to that, Stilicho. Both of those games use a front system, so you have different fronts converging on central points, and you are going out and trying to subjugate the barbarian hordes, drive them back, get them to surrender, so you can then bring them into your camp, and even in Stilicho use them to fight off the barbarians and help you continue containing them. Just a great little system. It uses cards. They are multi-use cards. You can discard a card to take a certain number of basic actions. You can also do the events that are shown on the cards. And then it has a cool surge mechanic where the barbarians, as certain cards come up, they'll be placed into the surge pile. And then as that surge pile grows, it will ultimately be triggered and you will be attacked. And that's always bad. Something bad will happen. You'll lose spaces, your armies will be driven back, you'll lose your soldiers, and you won't be as effective. Just a great way to mimic uprisings, revolts, and it just works really well for a fun, interesting, and playable game. I would say Wars of Marcus Aurelius is my favorite of those two, probably because of the nostalgia being the first of the two games. I think Stilicho in many ways is a superior game. Definitely production-wise and art and graphics, it's superior. They're both great games, but they're both really challenging. Historically, Stilicho lost his head like in turn 3, and you're trying to make it through to turn 10, and Wars of Marcus Aurelius is just as difficult. I've probably won about 30%, 40% of my plays of those, and there's nothing wrong with that. To me, that's what makes a good solitaire game, makes me want to keep coming back, makes me want to keep playing if it's challenging. And challenging doesn't always mean that you can't win it, but it does mean that it's difficult and you have to really work hard, make good decisions, use your limited action points and cards that you have to ultimately win and meet your victory conditions. So that's also a fantastic series. Another series that I have absolutely fell in love with from GMT Games is Navajo Wars and Comancheria. I'm still in the early stages of exploring and learning Navajo Wars. I've had it for a couple of years and just have not been fast in playing it. But Comancheria looks at the Comanche, which were basically the horse lords of the prairie. They roamed the area of Oklahoma, Texas, kind of in that near southwest. And it's just a fantastic game. You control several different villages and families within that village. You have a chief, and you are trying to build up your economy, gain food, gain weapons, even, yes, gain slaves from raiding other tribes, because all of those elements can be used to further your tribe and make you superior to ultimately withstand the Spanish who come in, as well as the Americans as they expand to the west. A very cool AI part of that game controls the AI, and it's a grid with a bunch of different chits on it that have names that kind of reach to different actions that they can take. And as you do those, you're going to move them around, even flipping them over, and they're going to get stronger or more difficult. And it's just a really great system. It is also present in Navajo Wars, but not to the level that has been developed in Comancheria. I think Comancheria is the superior game, but I also do like Navajo Wars. I think it's very interesting. Those are designed by Joel Toppin. Joel is a pastor who actually lives on a Blackfeet reservation in the West, and really has great insight into the history of that culture and people, and just a fantastic game system. I really have loved that. Another series that I've loved, and you've probably heard from me about this a lot, I have done several videos, is the Valiant Defense series from Dan Verson Games. These are designed by David Thompson. There are 4 current volumes, with a 5th volume that is in design and getting ready to go to Kickstarter shortly. But the first 4 volumes in that series are Pavlov's House, which deals with the German assault of the fortified apartment building in Stalingrad during World War II. Fantastic game. The follow-up to that is called Castle Itter, basically the last and probably the most strange battle of World War II, where you're defending literally with a French tennis player, some German soldiers that have quit the German army, Austrian nationals, and American troops with a tank. Just a great game. The third game in that is Soldiers in Postman's Uniform, which deals with the first battles in 1939 in Poland as the Germans invaded and holed up. The Polish held up in the post office, and the postmen literally fought off the Germans. Ultimately fell, but they were very heroic. Very cool mechanics. And the fourth, and my second favorite, is Lanzereth Ridge, which deals with the pre-Battle of the Bulge assault in and around the area around the city of Lanzereth. Just a great game. They're all great games. They borrow elements from the States of Siege series because there's tracks that converge into areas where you're defending. You are using your limited soldiers in a tactical respect to fight off those invading troops. You have different weapon groups, different abilities, different actions that you can take. Just a fantastic game. And my favorite in the system, Pavlov's House, has both the operational aspect to the game as well as that tactical inside the apartment. But the operational aspect is trying to make your supply lines reach across the Volga as they're under attack by Germans and the Stuka bombers. Just a really great game, how those two elements work together to create a cohesive experience. That is by far my favorite, but the other three are definitely good and bring their own unique experience to the series. The new one that is upcoming is the Battle of Henderson Field at Guadalcanal in 1942 in the Pacific, designed by Vincent Cooper. It's going to go to Kickstarter at the end of July and really looks like a great game. Beautiful, but also looks really interesting and unique, and borrows some of the operational mechanics from Pavlov's House that some of the others haven't necessarily carried through.